Winning Blueprint presents.
In the lab room.
Welcome, you are in the lab room. I'm your host, Lou. Thank you for joining me. It's Thursday, and normally after I say that, I tell you that it's football day. But for the first time all season, it's not. It's not football day today. There's no football today on Thursday. There won't be any next week on Thursday or any week thereafter. Thursday night football is done for the season. So basically, I have a free show. Normally, I wouldn't know what to do with myself here, but I'm going to be efficient here. I'm not going to waste this episode and just, babble about things that interest me. I'm going to actually use this show for the purpose of combining it with a show that would have otherwise had its own episode. So instead of me just using today as the Thursday's edition of In the Lab Room, since there's no Thursday night football game to talk about, how about I take this edition of In the Lab Room and combine it with the divisional standings episode and make it that episode as well. So that's what I'm going to do, because really, I feel like it's really starting to sort itself out on these divisions, and the playoff picture is really starting to narrow itself, which is good. This is what we want. You want to separate the good from the bad, separate the contenders from the pretenders, and start to figure out who's going where. Start fitting in the pieces of the puzzle together and start fitting in teams into slots. And I feel like we're getting to that stage now. We're almost at the point now where we can say, hey, these 6 are going on this side, these 6 are going on that side. Now we just need to know who's going to end up where. Haven't quite gotten there yet. In the AFC, we're a lot closer than in the NFC. In the NFC, it's still anybody's ball game for those 2 wild card spots. In the NFC, 3 of the divisions for the most part are locked up. The NFC West is going to be won by the San Francisco 49ers. They could lose against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday Night Football, and win the following week at home against Arizona, and they're fine. They got that division locked up. So that was a huge win on the road last week against the New England Patriots, because that allowed them to have that cushion, to have that margin for error down the stretch to still win the division, even if they were to slip up. You look at the NFC South. That division was won a long time ago. That division was won in Week 7. The Atlanta Falcons have that division sewn up, have had it sewn up for the longest of times. So now, all they're looking to do is sew up home field throughout in the NFC playoffs. So we know the South has been decided. The West has basically been decided. You look at the NFC North, that was decided last week. The Packers are your NFC North champions. So basically 3 of the 4 divisions in the NFC are set. You know who the winners are there. You look at the NFC East, and that's the only division that really is up for grabs. And it's a 3-way tie right now. This division is wacky. 5 weeks ago, this was a clear-cut winner. The Giants were going to win this division. The Cowboys probably weren't going to make the postseason. The Redskins were dead in the water. And this division looked like it was all but over. The Giants were assured of winning this division for the 2nd consecutive season and looking to have a legitimate shot at defending their Super Bowl championship. You fast forward to Week 16, and the Giants are tied in a 3-way tie with the Redskins and the Cowboys for first place in the NFC East. If the season ended today, your division winner would be the Washington Redskins, and neither the Cowboys or the Giants would make the postseason if the season ended today. But luckily enough for those 2 teams, it doesn't. So there's still football left to be played. And so the last 2 weeks of this season will determine who the winner of this division will be. So again, more compelling football coming up down the stretch as this season continues to wind down. So you look at the NFC right now, and as a whole, the whole NFC picture, it looks like this. Your number 1 seed, the Atlanta Falcons. That probably won't change. It could, but it probably won't change. The 49ers and the Packers have an outside shot at catching the Atlanta Falcons if they were to struggle down the stretch and drop their last 2. I seriously doubt that happening. I seriously doubt it. A win on Sunday would assure the Falcons of home field throughout and a first-round bye. A loss on Sunday for the Falcons on the road, or Saturday. They played Saturday against the Detroit Lions. A loss on Saturday against the Detroit Lions, and it would leave the door slightly ajar for the 49ers and Packers. However, the following week, the Falcons finish up their season, and if they're able to get a win there, they win home field throughout, and they will assure themselves of a first-round bye, which no one suspects that they won't get a first-round bye at this point. The real question is, will they get home field throughout? And I think last week's win really pretty much solidified them getting that as well. So you look at that, they're number 1. Number 2 right now in the NFC are the San Francisco 49ers. Now, that tie right now is their saving grace. Had that been a loss, which it probably should have been, then the Packers would be right there with them. Keep in mind, these 2 teams played first game of the season. Seems like ages ago, but nonetheless, San Francisco went into Green Bay and beat the Packers. So if these teams were to finish tied, which they won't because the Packers won't get a tie. Ties are so rare in the National Football League. But if they were to finish tied, remember, keep in mind the 49ers did beat this Green Bay Packers team. So that isn't an issue. The 49ers are your 2 seed right now. Looking at the 3 seed, I just told you that the Packers are really in a tug of war with the San Francisco 49ers over that first round bye and that 2 seed in the NFC. So the Packers are your 3 seed right now as it stands. Whoever wins the NFC East will be your 4 seed. They're not going to finish with a better mark than either the Packers nor the San Francisco 49ers. So the NFC East winner is locked into the 4 slot. They're guaranteed to be the number 4 seed in the NFC playoffs. So there's not a question of where they'll be seeded. It's just who it's going to be. You look at the 5th seed right now in the NFC. Your 5th seed is the Seattle Seahawks. This team is playing really good football right now. Many still think that they have a shot in the NFC West to win that division. With them finishing up with 2 home games against divisional opponents in the 49ers in Week 16 and the St. Louis Rams in Week 17, they could definitely clean that up, get to 11-5 on the season. Their only hope would be that they take care of business on Sunday Night Football against these San Francisco 49ers, drop them to 10-4-1, and then have them lose the following week at home against the Arizona Cardinals. Who sees the 49ers losing at home to the Arizona Cardinals? Not many. Not many at all. And so that's why, for my money, the NFC West has already been decided after the San Francisco 49ers were able to get that monumental win on Sunday Night Football against the San Francisco 49ers. That was a huge win for many different reasons. Not just because you beat a good team on the road, a team that hasn't lost in December and who knows how long. It's because that win probably wins you the division. You lose that game, and now this game on Sunday night has everything riding on it. Because if you lose last week, and then you lose this game, Seattle takes first place. Now you're in second place. Now you need the Rams to beat the Seattle Seahawks on that final game of the season. Instead, you go on the road, you take care of business against a tough New England Patriots team on the road in an environment that saw the Patriots win probably about 16, 20 games straight in December at home, and you get the win. So that was a huge win for the 49ers, and now you really put yourself in a position to win that division. And that's why I strongly believe firmly believe that the San Francisco 49ers will be your NFC West champions. But this Seattle Seahawks team has been playing some of the best football in the National Football League. Make no mistake about it. They've scored 50 points or more in their last 2 matchups. That hasn't been done since the 1950s. And they've been playing some extraordinary football of late. And that's why it is imperative that the San Francisco 49ers win this division, because this team hasn't lost all season at home. You don't want the Seattle Seahawks to get a home playoff game if you are any team in the NFC. That is a tough place to go and win a game. And so they need to be on the road. And San Francisco winning that division will ensure that the Seattle Seahawks won't sniff a home playoff game in the postseason for the most part, unless somehow the 6th seed goes on a run, wipes out the top seeds, and this Seattle Seahawks team is able to do the same. And in the NFC Championship game, the Seattle Seahawks are playing the 6th seed, whoever that may be. Then they would be a home playoff team. Then they would get a home playoff game. But that's a long shot from happening, and that's why it's imperative that the 49ers wrap this division up, and I feel like they will, winning 1 of their final 2 games. The Seattle Seahawks are your 5th seed as of right now. You look at the 6th seed in the NFC, and currently that's the Minnesota Vikings. Surprisingly enough, the Vikings, who I left for dead probably about 3-4 weeks ago. I said it was time for them to go home. Street lights are on. Time for them to go home, go in the house, and go have a seat with the Detroit Lions and sip on some hot chocolate. Their season was done. And they rose from the ashes. They were never quite dead in this season. They never dropped below 500. They were always floating right around that 500 mark. They allowed themselves to lose 2 straight after going to 6-4 in the season. They were at 6-6. Then they won 2 straight to get to 8-6, to give themselves a shot in the NFC. And so this Vikings team is playing good football without Percy Harvin. Who would have thought that they would have a shot without Percy Harvin? Once he went on the shelf, I thought that was it. That was the nail in the coffin. But it wasn't. Adrian Peterson has taken over. And it helps when you play the Rams. Always helps when you play the Rams. But they hosted the Chicago Bears at Mall of America Field and got it done. They beat the Bears, who were looking to make the postseason themselves. And so that was a huge win. They went on the road. They beat a Rams team that had a faint hope of making the postseason. They went and got it done. So I can't take anything away from these Vikings. They've been getting it done. But I tell you what, they have the hardest remaining schedule of any team fighting for a postseason spot in the NFC. I mean, they face the Houston Texans at Houston and come home for Green Bay. That's tough sledding. And so for them to fend off these teams, they're going to have to win 2 huge matchups down the stretch. But right now, as it stands, they are your 6th seed. So let's quickly go over the NFC, the playoff picture, these divisions, and then we'll move on to the AFC. So let's quickly do that, starting with the NFC East. Right now, as it stands, whoever wins this division is going to be your 4th seed. And it's a 3-way tie right now at the top of the NFC. If the playoffs started today, the Redskins would be your NFC East champions. They're atop this division by virtue of division record. And their remaining 2 games reads as such. On the road against Philly, home for Dallas. They win those 2 games, they win the NFC East. End of discussion. Same can be said for Dallas. They're 8-6 on the season. And their remaining games reads as such. Home for New Orleans, on the road for Washington. Win your final 2, you are the NFC East champions, are the Dallas Cowboys. The Giants, on the other hand, they're at 8-6. They're the only team in a division that doesn't control their own destiny within the division. They need help. They need both of these 2 teams to finish at 9-7 and them finish at 10-6 to win this division, because their divisional record within this division isn't good enough to win tiebreakers versus either one of these teams. So if they finish tied with either one of these teams, the Cowboys or the Redskins, they would lose a division by virtue of having a worse divisional mark. So the Giants need help, and they need to win out. Their final 2 matchups are at Baltimore, home for Philadelphia. So they have some work to do. They can still get in as a wild card. All of these teams can still get in as wild cards if they just win football games. You know, things will have to shake out for them to get in as a wild card, but they just need to win. Winning solves everything if you're these teams. Win as many games as you can. You got to win at least 9 to even be considered in the wild card, and you need to win 10 if you want to win this division. And that's how all these teams have to be playing down the stretch. You look at the next division up, and it's the NFC West. And here, you have two teams that are currently locked into the postseason. They got two teams going. Your 2 seed right now, as it stands in the NFC, are the San Francisco 49ers. They have a 10-3-1 mark on the season, and they finish up the season with games at Seattle, home against Arizona. So they just need to win one of their final two to assure themselves as NFC West champions. Meanwhile, the Seattle Seahawks, they're 9-5 on the season. They're currently the 5 seed in the NFC playoffs. And if they win their final two and the San Francisco 49ers lose their final two, then the Seattle Seahawks are your division winners in the NFC West. So huge matchup on Sunday Night Football between the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. But doesn't matter what happens there if the 49ers can get the job done in Week 17 versus the Arizona Cardinals at home. They still win the division. And that's why that game last week against the New England Patriots was so huge. They got it done. They gave themselves a bit of a cushion, a little bit of a margin of error down the stretch. And so they're probably going to win this division. Seattle is probably going to be your 5th seed in your first wild card in the NFC playoffs. They finish up with games at home against San Francisco and St. Louis. So they can probably win those 2 games, get to 11-5, and assure themselves of the 5th seed. They probably won't fall any lower than that in the NFC playoff picture. You look at the next division, and it's the NFC North. And right now, as it stands, the Green Bay Packers are your 3 seed. So basically, the Packers would need San Francisco to lose out and for them to win out, for them to get their hands on that number 2 seed in their first round bye. That's what their target is. They have to take care of business first themselves. And if they do that, they'll have a shot to get home field throughout. They'll have a shot to get a first round bye in the NFC playoffs and get that number 2 seed. But that's a long shot because, again, the 49ers would have to lose at home against Arizona in Week 17. I don't see that happening. But the Packers are home for Tennessee and finish up on the road at Detroit. And finish up. But the Packers are at home for Tennessee and finish up on the road at Minnesota. You look at another team in this division right now that's in the postseason. If it started today, it'd be the Minnesota Vikings. They'd be your 6th seed. And they're probably not going to make the postseason. I left them for dead about a month ago, and they've proven me wrong, but I find it hard to believe that this Minnesota team can go on the road to Houston, get a win, come back home, and beat a Green Bay Packers team that is looking to try to get a 2 seed in the NFC playoffs. It's going to be tough. They're the only team left in the NFC that can say, I got to play 2 10-win teams down the stretch. 2 10-win or better teams down the stretch to try to get into the postseason. No one else has that tough of a slate remaining. And so it's going to be tough for the Minnesota Vikings to fend off every other team that's looking to try to get into the postseason. Going to be tough, but again, they've put themselves in a position to try to make the postseason. All they can do is go out and give it their best effort. Also in this division are the Chicago Bears, and they're 8-6 on the season, just as the Minnesota Vikings are. The only difference is the Vikings have a better divisional mark. The Bears have done a lot of damage in the AFC, but not so much in the NFC, and it's costing them right now as they're on the outside looking in. They would lose a lot of tiebreakers with other teams who have better conference marks than this Chicago Bears team, and so it's imperative that the Bears win out and get help from other teams. They have a soft schedule down the stretch, so they can get to 10 wins, but they'll have to go on the road and take care of some business against the likes of Arizona and Detroit. 2 road games against 2 bad teams. They could easily win those games, get to 10-6. They'll need help to get in. If other teams finish 10-6, they'll need help because they need other teams to finish at 9-7, not 10-6. Because if they finish 10-6 with, say, the Vikings, the Vikings would get in because they split with the Bears during the regular season and they have a better conference record than the Bears. Same can be said about the Giants. The Giants would have a better conference record than the Bears if they finished at 10-6 along with the Chicago Bears team. So a lot of teams can finish at 10-6 and still get in over this Bears team. So it's imperative that they win out and get some help. You look at the NFC South division, and it's only one team from this division. It's the Atlanta Falcons. They're the #1 seed. They just need to win one of their 2 remaining games, and they'll lock up home field throughout in the NFC playoffs and a first-round bye. Their remaining schedule looks like this. At Detroit on Saturday Night Football. Home for Tampa Bay in the Week 17 finale. So just win one of those 2 final games. You'll assure yourself of home field throughout, and you'll assure yourself of a first-round bye. And I don't see the Atlanta Falcons doing it any other way. They've been the best team record-wise all season long in the NFC, and they'll remain that way as this season comes to a conclusion. They'll be the #1 seed in the NFC. They'll be the team with home field throughout in the NFC playoffs. And that's going to do it for the NFC picture as it stands right now. Let's take a look at the AFC picture and how that is rounded into form. And really, this one is a lot less convoluted than the NFC is. And you'll see that here in a second. So let's go over the AFC picture quickly in terms of 1 to 6 as it stands right now. And then we'll get into divisions, who's in, who's not, and what's it going to take to lock up a playoff berth if you haven't already done so in the AFC. So as it stands right now in the AFC, your #1 seed is the Houston Texans. They'll probably remain that way if they take care of business down the stretch. We'll talk about them a little bit later in this segment. Your #2 seed in the AFC right now is the Denver Broncos. And it's simple for them. Just win. If they just win out, they're your #2 seed. And I don't see why they won't be able to do that. They're currently #2. Currently 3rd in the AFC right now are the New England Patriots. And most likely they won't finish any worse than 3rd. There's an outside shot that they could finish worse than 3rd, which would be 4th because they've already won a division. But it's hard for me to see the Ravens catching fire at the end of the season, winning 2 straight, and having the Patriots lose one of their remaining 2 ball games to get to 11 wins. Ravens get to 11. Those 2 be tied, and Ravens own the tiebreaker by virtue of a head-to-head win over these Patriots. Hard for me to see that happening down the stretch. But it could happen. We'll talk about that a little bit later as well. The Ravens are your #4 seed right now. They haven't won this division yet, but the way the teams behind them are playing, they're probably going to win this division. But right now, nothing is etched in stone. These Baltimore Ravens had shots to lock this division up and have squandered them. Now they just have to try and win down the stretch to assure themselves of a home playoff game in the AFC playoffs. #5 in the AFC playoffs are the Indianapolis Colts. And they're basically in. Again, nothing has been clinched officially, but they just need to beat Kansas City on Sunday, and they're in. They're going to beat Kansas City. They're going to get in. They're going to get their 10th win of the season and be the #5 seed in the AFC playoffs. So then it comes down to the 6th seed, and this is where it gets interesting in the AFC. The AFC has really all but been decided in terms of who's going to get in, except for this one spot. That 6th seed is between 2 teams. It's a 2-man race, and that's why I said this conference is a lot less convoluted, a lot less cloudy than the NFC. There's a lot of teams vying for 2 spots in the NFC. Meanwhile, in the AFC, there's 1 spot really available, and there's only 2 teams vying for that 1 spot. And they play each other, so it really doesn't get much easier than that. So the 6th seed is being held currently by the Cincinnati Bengals. And we'll talk about what they need to do to lock that up. And it's going to be interesting, though, in the AFC because even though we already pretty much know who's going to the postseason in the AFC, we still don't know who's going to be where in terms of seeding. And that's what's going to make the AFC down the stretch very compelling football. So you take a look at the divisions as we go one by one through the divisions and talk about who's in, who's out, who's trying to get in. And where they stand in the AFC playoff picture as it's constructed right now and moving forward. You start with the AFC East. And right now it's only one team that's going to the postseason from this division. It's the New England Patriots. And the Patriots are 10-4 on the season after that heartbreaking loss at home to the San Francisco 49ers. They're now 10-4. They finish up with the remaining slate of at Jacksonville, home for Miami. 2 winnable games, 2 games they should win. Get to 12-4. And right now they're third in the AFC. They win their final 2. And somehow Denver slips up. And these 2 finish tied at 12-4. New England would flip-flop with the Denver Broncos by virtue of a head-to-head win over the Denver Broncos. And they would be your 2 seed. They would get a first-round bye. And they would be the team that would be hosting a playoff game if these 2 teams were to meet in the postseason. So, very interesting dynamic there. The Patriots can only worry about themselves at this point. They're no longer in the driver's seat. They have to win, and they need help. You look at the next division in the AFC, and it's the AFC West. Again, another division that's pretty bad. One team and one team only will be coming out of this division. And as you already know, it's the Denver Broncos. The Broncos will be your number 2 seed if they just take care of business. All they have to do is win. They've earned the right after winning 9 consecutive games. They're the hottest team in the National Football League right now. And if they finish up on an 11-game winning streak to finish out the regular season, which with their final 2 games at home against bad opponents, we can't see not happening. They finish up at home against Cleveland, at home against Kansas City. Shouldn't be too tough of a task for this Denver Broncos team if they just play football the way they've been playing down the stretch. They should win those 2 games, finish up on an 11-game winning streak, get to 13-3 on the season, and be your number 2 seed, getting a first-round bye and really solidifying themselves as one of the best teams in the AFC this season. You look at the AFC North, and this division went from one of the toughest and most feared divisions about a month ago to a division that just has turned into helter-skelter overnight. The Ravens can't seem to win a football game. The Steelers can't get out of their own way. And the Cincinnati Bengals are just waiting in the weeds for these 2 teams to continue to implode. Right now, as it stands, there's no division winner. The Ravens lead this division by the slimmest of margins. Right now, they're winning this division by just 1 game. And so, if they don't take care of business on Sunday versus the New York Giants at home, they leave that door open and cracked for the Cincinnati Bengals or the Pittsburgh Steelers to still win that division. Right now, it's most feasible that the Ravens could lose this division to the Cincinnati Bengals. Because right now, it's most feasible that the Baltimore Ravens could lose this division to the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals are only a game behind, and they play those same Ravens on the final week of the season. The Ravens right now are 9-5, clinging to the AFC North Division lead. They finish up the season home for the Giants at Cincinnati. Huge matchup to finish up the season. The Ravens are currently the 4th seed. You look at the Bengals, they're currently the 6th seed in the AFC playoffs. And they're 8-6 on the season. And they finish up at Pittsburgh, home for Baltimore. So they have a legitimate shot at not only winning the wild card in the AFC and getting into the postseason that way, they could still win the division. If the Ravens slip up against the Giants at home and the Bengals are able to take care of business against the Pittsburgh Steelers, that would set up a winner-take-all matchup in Week 17. So, very compelling football down the stretch in this division. You also can't forget about the Pittsburgh Steelers, who have really dug themselves a hole, but they can still get out of it by winning down the stretch. They're 7-7 because they lost on the road at Dallas a week ago. And so now, if the playoffs started today, they're on the outside looking in. They play the Cincinnati Bengals, do these Steelers, at home in Week 16. A win there would help them leapfrog these Cincinnati Bengals. They will be your 6th seed. And if the Ravens lose to the Giants, Then that Week 17 matchup between the Ravens and the Bengals will mean that the Ravens would have to have that one to remain division champs, as the Pittsburgh Steelers could win against Cincinnati in Week 16, and then the following week win against Cleveland at home and finish at 9-7 as well and take that division. So this division is just wacky. It is just bonkers in the AFC North. A lot of moving parts. If you're the Ravens, just win. You win, and you're in as the AFC North champions and the number 4 seed in the AFC playoffs. Same can be said for Cincinnati. Just win. You may not win the division, but just winning on Sunday against the Pittsburgh Steelers will assure you of, at worst, a wild card berth. If you're Pittsburgh, you got to win. You don't have any options. You lose, you're out. You lose either one of your remaining 2 games and you're out. So it's huge that the Steelers get it done. The Steelers somehow, some way could still get into the postseason at 8-8. As crazy as that sounds. But they need to win. They need to win. And I'll say it. If you're afraid to say it, I'll say it for you. The Steelers lose either one of their remaining 2 games, they're done. I'm writing them off. They are absolutely done if they don't win their 2 remaining games and get to 9-7 on the season. But right now, as it stands, next week is a must-win game for the Steelers because they lose to the Cincinnati Bengals, they're done. They are eliminated from playoff contention are the Pittsburgh Steelers. So going to be a huge matchup next week for everyone in this division. These games are paramount for all these teams in this division in Week 16 and moving forward. Last but not least, we find ourselves in the AFC South. And this is a 2-man race, but the Houston Texans have finally, after beating the Indianapolis Colts a week ago, have finally locked up this division. Seems like it's been a long time coming. They've had the best record in the AFC all season long and yet could not lock up this division because they hadn't played the Indianapolis Colts and they refused to lose for a while there. But now they have this division locked up, so they'll be one of the first 4 seeds in the AFC. But it's crazy because as good as they've played this season, this Texans team could still end up the number 3 seed. If they lose their final 2 games of the season and finish up 12-4, not only could they find themselves without home field throughout in the AFC playoffs, they could find themselves without a first-round bye, as crazy as that seems. They've led in the AFC conference from wire to wire. They've been the best team record-wise all season long in this conference. And for them to not get home field throughout, for them to not get a first-round bye, would be a collapse of epic proportions for this team. Because they need it. That's number one. They need to be home. That's number one. Number two, you've led all season long. Let that slip out of your fingers this late in the season. That would do irreparable damage to the psyche of this team moving forward. I would venture to say that they might lose their first round playoff game at home if that were to occur. But I don't think it's going to happen. You look at this division, you look at the Houston Texans, they're 12-2 on the season. They're the number 1 seed in the AFC. And again, as I've said for other teams, they just got to win down the stretch. Home for Minnesota, at Indianapolis, they win those 2 games, they're your number 1 seed in the AFC. You look at the Indianapolis Colts, right now, they have that number 5 seed in the AFC locked up. They haven't clinched anything, but I'm telling you, they're going to go to Kansas City and win, get their 10th win of the season, and assure themselves of a playoff berth and the number 5 seed in the AFC playoffs. They've been tremendous all season. They found ways to win games, and they're going to make the postseason as the 5 seed in the AFC. They're 9-5 right now. They finish up with games at Kansas City and home against Houston. They could win both of those games because Houston could be playing for nothing at the end of the season in Week 17. Houston could be playing for everything and not win that game because the Colts have been a good home team all year long. So they don't need to win both of them. They just need to win one and they're in. And I see them getting that one win that they need against Kansas City in Week 16. And so the AFC playoffs pretty much look like that. Your 1 seed are the Texans. They win, they'll be your 1 seed. The 2 seed are the Broncos. They win, they'll be your 2 seed. The 3 seed are the New England Patriots. They need some help. But if they win out and get a little bit of help, they'll be your 2 seed. Your 4 seed are the Baltimore Ravens. Win, and you're the 4 seed. You win that division in the AFC North. It's simple. Win, and you win the AFC North. Lose, and you open up the door for anyone in that division. The 5 seed right now, Indianapolis Colts, they're probably going to be your 5 seed. All they have to do is beat Kansas City, and they're your 5 seed. 6 seed, that is up for grabs. That is the big question mark in the AFC. Who's going to be your 6 seed? Right now, it's the Cincinnati Bengals. They beat Pittsburgh on Sunday, and they'll be assured of no worse than that 6 seed. They lose against the Steelers. The Steelers are now your 6 seed, and all they have to do is beat Cleveland on the final week of the season to ensure themselves of a playoff berth. So it's crazy. It's wacky in the AFC, especially in the AFC North. But really, it comes down to that one spot, that 6 seed. And it's going to be fun to watch down the stretch to see who takes care of business, who handles their business on Sunday in Week 16, who leaves the door open, who shuts the door, and who will win that division, who will get that final spot. All of these questions could be answered by the end of play on Sunday, or none of these questions could be answered. And that's the beauty of the AFC North, and that 6th and final spot in the AFC playoffs. So that's your divisional standings. And that's a touchdown. Go ahead and throw it up. I'm going to tack on this quick extra point. Now, remember I told you, I don't remember if it was Monday or Tuesday's program, I believe it was Tuesday's program, that I was interested to see turning point. And I said that I thought the Cowboys would be there. They were. I thought that the 49ers would be there. They were. And I wanted to see what was being said behind the scenes on the sidelines, because you get some good audio when you mic these guys up and allow them to speak. You get some good audio. And that's exactly what we got on the sideline. Now, Vernon Davis has been quoted as coming out and saying, and he's been one of the ones that's been vocal throughout this whole process. Him and Delaney Walker were both vocal when the change was made at the quarterback position to make Colin Kaepernick the starter in San Francisco. They were both vocal in saying that, hey, Alex Smith is our leader, and I think that he should get his spot back, and he's our leader, and he should be leading us moving forward. And then Vernon Davis took it a step further after their win against New England and said, this really sucks that I have to, build continuity with another quarterback. I don't want to build continuity with another quarterback. I liked it. I really liked it the way it was before, is essentially what he said. And you could see and hear a little bit of his frustration if you watch Turning Point. Randy Moss scores a touchdown early in this game. Vernon Davis, coincidentally enough, is overshot slightly in this game. He was wide open for a touchdown. One thing Alex Smith has made his living on when he was the quarterback, the starting quarterback of this San Francisco 49ers team, is hitting Vernon Davis, whether it be on a corner route, whether it be on a fly route, whether it be on a seam route. He's made his living hitting Vernon Davis. And now Vernon Davis he's feeling some type of way because he's not getting the ball as much. Delaney Walker is being utilized more. Randy Moss is being utilized more. And Michael Crabtree has emerged ever since Colin Kaepernick has taken over as the starting QB. And Vernon Davis's production and numbers have started to wane. They've started to kind of fall to the backdrop, so to speak. And he's starting to feel that pressure. And he didn't like it one bit. And on the sidelines, you can see Randy Moss talking to him. And Randy told him, hey, don't start that. This isn't the time for that. You'll get yours. Just hang in there. You'll get yours. And who else is he talking? And who is he talking to? None other than Vernon Davis. See, I told you, you can take a lot from just paying attention and listening when teams are mic'd up, when players are mic'd up. Whether it's sound effects or Turning Point or showtimes inside the NFL, whatever the case may be, you can learn a lot from these mics on the sideline. And I thought that was very telling, because what Randy Moss was saying in that soundbite was Vernon Davis had already, to Randy Moss, voiced his displeasure with him being overshot and not getting the football. And Randy is doing his best job of telling him to calm down. Don't cause a scene on the sideline right now. This is not the time nor the place for that. You'll get your opportunities. Just hang in there. So he's calming Vernon Davis down, telling him, don't implode on the sideline. Don't erupt. Don't give the media and the TV cameras the satisfaction of seeing you frustrated. And hang in there. You'll get the football. It's coming your way. And when it comes, you'll make a play. That's basically what Randy Moss is doing, is diffusing a situation that could have gotten out of control and could have been explosive on that sideline. So that lets me know Vernon Davis is still not happy with that quarterback change. And he may never be happy with the quarterback change. But it's something he's going to have to live with. But I found that fascinating that on Turning Point, they got the audio that I was looking for. I knew that there were still some guys out there not 100% sold and on board with that move. And Vernon Davis is definitely one of them. That's something to keep an eye on down the stretch. Because if this 49ers team, say they lose their first playoff game. Say they get a bye, they come off the bye, and they lose to the 5 seed, to the 4 seed, whoever that may be. Say they lose. There's going to be some backlash. Best believe it. And probably the player heading that mutiny is going to be Vernon Davis. Let's hope that it doesn't come to that, but if it does, I guarantee you he'll be on the front line of that whole charge for Alex Smith to be the starting quarterback. And that's going to do it for this program. I thank you for joining me on this program. I was able to combine the two, in the lab room and the divisional standings program, so got a lot accomplished. Very productive today. Been a long episode, so really don't feel like getting into the specifics of how you can contact or view the show. But you know all the social networking avenues. You know all of the sites that you can try. But just in case you don't, there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's Twitter, and then there's the inbox in the lab room at gmail.com. So everything is in the lab room predicated, as this show is called, entitled In the Lab Room. Just type it in on any of those social media networks and you'll find it. And that's going to do it for this program. I thank you for joining me. Want to see you back here Friday when we go over the slate of games and get into who's going to win, who's going to lose. And I prognosticate as the lab gets into the Pick'em Weekly and we continue to try to better our records down the stretch. So I want to see you back here tomorrow, same time, same place. And as always, have a good one. Take care. See you tomorrow.